So ICE is apparently going to be equipping their agents with shock gloves in case you thought things weren't going to get any worse anytime soon. They're set to pay up to $20 million for thousands of these devices. These devices are called GLOVE, which is an acronym that stands for some kind of low voltage or whatever, and they are designed to emit painful shocks to people in order to gain compliance. In fact, the company that is making these gloves is called Compliance Technology, because I guess they couldn't think of anything creepier to call their company. So before we dive into this, I want to take a quick look at a story I think should be a little bit bigger. This comes from Polygraph, which is a Substack that focuses on economic analysis for the working class. And let's just take a look at how much money ICE is currently sitting on based on how much that we've given them over the past couple years. Well, there you have it. So ICE is sitting on $100 billion because of the big, beautiful bill. And then what they got a year later, they have about $114 billion. They have spent, let's see, less than 14 of that. So they are sitting on a piggy bank, pun entirely intended, but at least we know where a little bit of that money is being spent. It's being spent on compliance technology. Now, there are folks who think this is a great idea because it's going to help like weaker officers or older officers, and it's going to be used for getting people out of the car, and don't worry, it's not going to be misused. They're not really going to cause any injuries. It's just like a little bee sting. And then you have folks over at the ACLU who are going, actually, no, this is going to go bad. And I tend to be in that latter camp, and evidently so does Geraldo Rivera. So I want to check in and see how he's responding to this, and then let's do a little reflection on what all of this implies.
Hello, sir. What do you make of these gloves?
Hey, Connell. Yeah, sickening, disgusting. How low can you get? I mean, I'd love to put those gloves on and slap around the inventor a little bit and see how he likes it. Really, why not get cattle prods? You send in these kids to immigration court, their parents get taken. You got 7-year-olds standing alone in the courtroom with no lawyer. They're doing away with legal services. The federal government wants to. I was a legal services attorney. The desperate people, but I mean children. And I mean this thing with the how is the audience with this? You're looking at this. How's this? How's it? How far do you want to go to round up law-abiding migrants? Do you want to torture them? Do you really want to do that? Is this where America is at now?
I have a possible answer.
So they say it's the opposite, Geraldo. Like I had this guy, Todd Bensman, who used to work with Tom Homan on last hour, and here's how he described the whole thing. I want to see what you make of this.
This is really, it's like an ouchie. It delivers an ouchie, enough of a like, get your hand off the steering wheel, or, so I don't have to pull you out of the car and beat you up.
Yeah, what are all you snowflakes complaining about, all right? It's just, masked agents acting without impunity, now wearing gloves where they can hit a button and repeatedly electrocute people at their own discretion. And we've seen how good their discretion is over the past year. So what do you complain? What could possibly go wrong?
As you're resisting arrest.
So de-escalation, an ouchie, no?
It's an ouchie to you, the user of the glove. It's not an ouchie to the person getting ouched. Yeah. And you're terrorized anyway. The cops are stopping you. Picture this: you got an ICE agent, 6'2" ICE agent with a full military garb. He's got a face mask on, and now he's got gloves from outer space. Now he's going to be able to grab you, and every time you resist, he's going to put his hand on you, and you're going to go. I mean, come on, Connell. This is not us.
Yeah.
So, yeah, here's the thing. for Geraldo, it kind of is us, you know. I think this is who we are. It's also a great example of how the metaphorical and the literal can sometimes like to wear each other's clothes. Now, the shock doctrine that is theorized by Naomi Klein is predicated on the idea of disasters, either real or perceived. And these disasters are what allow neoliberal policies to be really quickly implemented. In other words, privatization, deregulation, and the cutting of social spending. Anything that basically helps the people at the bottom so that you can rather help the people at the top. Now, neoliberalism itself is something that took off like in the late 70s and then really went into the stratosphere in the 80s and 90s, and it's also what has led primarily to all the wealth inequality that we have. So when you are not getting compensated fairly for what you're producing, the bulk of that reasoning is because there have been policies that have been intentionally made to suppress workers' wages, okay? So it's all part of that. So that allows them to like shuttle in these policies without people thinking about it because they're so distracted, aka shocked by what's going on here, all right? Now, you can take, for example, the absolute lunacy around immigration. Okay, but the difference here between immigration and something like COVID or Katrina or 9/11 in terms of disasters is that the immigration thing is mostly a perceived disaster, but that doesn't matter. Right? Okay, the reality is that we have undocumented immigrants that subsidize healthcare and Social Security. They are a fraction as likely to commit any kind of crime. But if you say that to somebody, it's not going to really do anything for them. And the reason for that is because they have perceived a disaster. And why wouldn't they? All you have to do is listen to the language that is used by people in the highest perches of government when they're saying things like they're going to poison the blood of our nation. They're flooding in. We have open borders. People are going to take that to mean that this is a disaster. Now, when disasters have happened in the past, what happens? A lot of people end up making like a lot of money. Okay, if you look at, for example, 9/11, you have the war on terror, and then you have all of these Halliburton making $80 billion, and you have the military-industrial complex lining their pockets. Now, let's zoom forward into the present with ICE. You have this disaster that is essentially a fantasy in people's minds, but fantasy is oftentimes more powerful than reality. And when you have a fantasy like immigration being the biggest problem in the world, then eventually that's going to become calcified and impenetrable even to reason. And that's not necessarily to say that immigration isn't a complex issue and there's not more nuance there. In fact, that's the point. There is no nuance here. This is about people who have perceived a disaster, and that is allowing them to be taken advantage of. So now you have ICE, and similar with 9/11 or Katrina, you have all of these things, all these private companies that are making money, whether it's Flock or Palantir or now compliant technologies. It always happens that it ends up benefiting the people at the top at the expense of the people at the bottom. Now, what's going on here too is it's just kind of a little metaphorical. Like, it is an actual shocking, it's actually shocking people and treating them like animals. And that's what we've become. That's a reflection of who we are. And I think it's something that we should all really sit with a little bit because it's a little bit gross. Also, I do highly recommend, obviously, Shock Doctrine by Naomi Klein. And the reality is, I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. And I don't understand what the the mode of thought here is when you are already being looked upon pretty poorly by the public, for ICE to turn around and go, okay, actually, we're going to wear gloves that electrocute people. I don't understand from a PR perspective how that's going to benefit them. But maybe that's not the point at all. Maybe the point is to benefit themselves and to use some of that $100 billion that they are sitting on. And thank you to Steven Semler for explaining that to people. They're going to use that to enrich their friends and to make things easier for themselves, all while not training their officers and while demanding more funding. But we can't afford any kind of college. It would cost less than $100 billion to pay for every American's, not just their tuition, their living expenses, their housing, and their books. It would cost less than $100 billion, and that's the amount of money that ICE can't figure out how to spend. And so they're going to the electronics store, otherwise known as compliance technology, and they're purchasing $20 million of things to dehumanize them. These are traumatizing devices, regardless of whether they cause physical harm harm. This has a whole history going back to electroshock therapy that was also funded by the CIA. This is exactly what they've been doing for a very long time. It's just happening more brazen right now, and maybe we should all pay a little bit more attention to it. But good on Geraldo Rivera for having enough humanity to call this out, and I hope more people do as well, because I really don't know how you can say with a straight face that this is going to go well in any way. Anyway, my name is Dr. Elliott Morgan. Thank you guys for being here, and I tell you what, man, we're in for a real wild future. See you next time.